Good morning. It's a beautiful day, and these are my work clothes. I was going to put on my ordinary uniform, my yoga uniform. I have one, primarily black, and then change and go into the garden. But the fourth Purushatra is freedom. And it caused me to really think about my actions, and it does continuously. The other day, I was outside the church getting into my car, and a guy came up to me and he said, "Love your car." And I said, "Thank you." He said, "It reminds me of somebody." And I said, "Oh, good, because it reminds me of someone too." And that was one of the reasons that I bought it. And I said, "Tell me about the person it reminds you of." And he said, "She was feisty, opinionated, aggressive, educated, brilliant, a great teacher." And I said, "I know who you're talking about. You're talking about Annie ten Brink." And he said, "Yeah, exactly. Well, the late Annie ten Brink." And I said, "She was such an amazing influence on my life." A lot of people said that she influenced their life, but apart from changing their taste in wine, because she was very enthusiastic about wine, and travelled a lot of time theoretically to get it. And the more I thought about Annie, and the more independent and free she seemed to others, the less free she seemed to me. When she was younger, she left home, which was Belgium at the time. She had a doctorate from Amsterdam in philosophy, and she loved talking about philosophers. Taught me a lot. She was an amazing person in many ways, but when she talked about her arrival in Melbourne, she talked about how everybody was just stunned with the fact that here she was in the 1950s, I think, arriving in Melbourne, or it could be in the 1960s, arriving in Melbourne wearing Dior, because she felt that hardly anybody in Melbourne even understood Dior. They might have and they might not have. And when she moved to Woodend, and I don't know how long she was here, I certainly knew her for the whole length of time I was here. And she was still a very unusual person. She used to walk to work, and it was a long way. She wore plaits and full skirts and kept goats. And I'm trying to imagine what the amazing people, what the people in Woodend would think of this amazing person who almost dropped from the sky in terms of difference. And it certainly gave her the edge with regards to her French teaching private business, because people assumed rightly that she'd had grounding in culture and could teach them much more than they could learn from an ordinary French teacher. That's true. But there was something missing. And it seemed like she had it, but she didn't. And the thing that was missing is the fourth Purushatra, which was freedom. One can never know another's heart, but you can guess what's going on by what you see. A really interesting time in her life was when she was getting older and she had to have a hip replacement. And she had everything organized. She had her students organized into teams, and they came and cooked and cleaned and did things, because it wasn't that they did it voluntarily, they did it without quibble because they loved her, but she had them organized. You will do this and you will do that and you will come here and you will go there. And so from early morning till late at night, she was totally occupied with these teams of people coming and going, as well as the ones the council provided to clean. Because what Annie was scared of more than anything else was being alone. Shortly after that experience, she accidentally fell down her dangerous path to the house. It was like climbing Everest every day, negotiating that path, and if it was wet, which it was this particular day, it was suicidal, and we all tried to tell her that it was, but it was kind of a challenge that she met every day. Anyway, she fell down it, and she hadn't organized the teams. And besides that, it was just a minor break, or, you know, as opposed to a hip replacement, it was minor. She hurt her wrist on the way down, so that meant everything was slowed down, but it wasn't a huge planned for event like the hip replacement. And I went one day and she was very depressed. And I said, what's this all about? And she said, well, you know, this is almost like death. I said, what's like death? And she said, being alone. It's the most frightening thing. I just can't cope with being alone. So there she was, theoretically having everything, everyone looking up to her, independence, telling us all that we needed independence and freedom, but she didn't have it. Maybe that's why she kept on showing us that we needed to work on it as well. And the fear of being alone is really a fear that drives so many people. There's the fear of not having money, the fear of not being able to do what we want. The fear of being alone is a biggie. People get married because they are frightened of being alone. Not because they love the person who's asked them, but they're scared of being alone. If you're scared of being alone, it's a really good thing to work through it before you make any commitment to another person. Because freedom is the name of the game. We work on duty so that we can be free. We work on prosperity so we can be free. We work on pleasure so that we can be free. Not free of pleasure, but free from pleasure in the wrong place. We work on duty so that we all know how to organize our lives, giving the right attention to the right things. We work on pleasure so that we will give the right attention to the right things. We work on prosperity so that we give the right attention to the right things. And if we don't do those three things, we will have freedom. There will be nothing that we want. Therefore, everything will be given to us. I'm sure you've noticed that. When you don't want stuff, when you are free, when you are able to be by yourself, everybody wants to be with you. When you don't want money, things come. When you don't want things, things come. If you really want to be rich, start giving away money. The act of giving will be just amazing in itself, and you'll realize how much money you need, and everything will be given as Jesus said, unto you. But you can't be truly wealthy. You can have money in the bank and not give any of it away, but it won't profit you. I know people who are vastly wealthy, and they live like paupers, as do their families. And you just think, if they just gave it away, if they just used it, they would find out what it's about. But they don't. And freedom also is about being free from the opinions of others. Doing what you want to do, being who you want to be. And it takes some working out. It doesn't come to you right away. And it changes, because that's what it's about as well. I was poking around the op shop the other day, and a man came up to me and he said, "Good morning, Jane." And I said, "Oh, hi. Do I know you?" And he said, "I've seen you around." And I said, "Oh, well, I have been around." And he said, "I recognise you by your get-up." And I said, "What is my get-up?" And he said, "Well, you're different." And I said, "Well, thank you. It's not that I try to be different. I wear what I like. I am who I want to be." And he didn't understand that, so went off. So what are you doing that unhooks you from the attitudes of others that make you unhappy? I've told you before that when I was 9, my mother said to me that she wanted me to be normal. Normal to her meant that I wasn't doing exercises or pulling the mattress off the bed so I could sit on it and meditate, because she didn't understand that, and I guess not many people of her acquaintance did. She didn't want me to do the tarot or tell tea leaves, and I must say I didn't make a hobby of that, but people got to know that I did, and even at 9 sought me out. It was okay that I did Sunday school. It was okay that I went to church, but there was lots of other things that were not okay and not normal. And my mother said to me that she would insist on me being normal, or I could live in the garage. Now, the garage wasn't just a place for cars. There was a section that kind of was for washing machines and things like that, and it was, and I made it comfortable because I chose the garage. I'm not sure whether my sister got that option. I think she did, and I think she took it as well. because my mother had very definite ideas about what normal was, and we were expected to comply if we lived under her roof. And apparently the garage was not her roof. Might have been Dad's roof because the car was there. But it gave me freedom. It didn't mean that I didn't have to do the dishes. It didn't mean that I ate by myself. It didn't mean that I wasn't part of the household when viewed by people outside, but it gave me freedom within the family group. I could do the things that were meaningful to me. I wasn't prepared to give them up. When people used to come visit my mother and I walked in the door, she'd say, "Oh, don't pay any attention to Jane, she's not normal." That was a great compliment to me. And even at that age, I'd achieved freedom. It has brought me great pain during my growing up, but I have maintained my freedom where I can. As soon as I realised I'd given it up, I tried to get it back. That also gave me great pain sometimes because I wasn't quite sure how to get it back. But it's all a work in progress. So what are you doing to be free? It doesn't mean leaving your house. It means working within the structure to achieve freedom. Being able to meditate and do yoga without destroying the household by including them. Probably a good idea. Being free from what your relatives think. Being free from being emotionally involved in just everything. Some people are emotionally involved in everything that happens, and their whole day is organised by other people. They are bound to things that they don't like. Well, they believe they're bound to things. It's because they're scared to make a change. Make a little change and find out how that feels, and then make another little change. But make it within the boundaries of the ideas that I've been talking to you about. And then there's a thing that really helps is making your mind free. And that's where meditation comes in. Not 3 hours. One of my students, her husband, built a room in the attic so that he could meditate away from the family because the noise drove him nuts. He expected me to be happy about that, but I don't think that he understood at all. Yes, he had money enough to build an attic room for himself, but really he was not into meditating. He was into taking himself away from the family, and it doesn't give him freedom. And the family don't like it. They feel isolated and not part of his life. That's not what meditation is about. If he wants to go and live on a mountain, go and live on a mountain. But don't do it within the household. It's an ego thing. Shh, your father's meditating. That's rubbish. If you can't meditate in the middle of Southern Cross Station, you don't know about meditating. If you can't meditate anywhere you want to, you're not meditating. If you've got children, I'm sure you've had a baby, and the baby comes home from hospital, and if you provide perfect silence for the baby when it's sleeping, will you be able to take the baby anywhere? No. It wants perfect silence. It'll scream if it doesn't get it. But if you allow the baby to take part in the family and allow it to be part of the family all the time, it'll sleep when it needs to, and you'll be able to take it out in the bassinet to a football game. It'll still sleep. You take it to a restaurant and you put it under the table in the bassinet, it'll be asleep. You know, we just think everything has to be perfect before we can do what we want. Well, nothing's perfect. And we're put on this earth to deal with it. We have to deal with the material. We have to deal with matter. And before you get freedom, you have to learn to deal with those things. So freedom is a very complex achievement. And not many people that I know have it. Nelson Mandela had it. He was invited to leave the prison many times before he was actually released. But they said to him, if you leave the prison, if we give you a pardon now, we will prohibit you from writing or talking to groups, etc., etc. And he said, no, I'd rather be in prison. I'm more free in prison than I would be out there living the kind of life you think I should. And he was right. So, you know, when you leave one thing, just say you left your job or you got fired or whatever it is, if you look at that properly, that could be the springboard to a new life, because suddenly you've been cut loose, you're free, you can decide what it is you want to do. When my house was burnt down, yes, it was catastrophic. I loved my house. I just put verandas all around and the bushfire came and bingo, house gone. But it really did make me sort out what was important. Some things I didn't deal with well at all. But I understood what was important to me. I understood the nourishment I needed. And I found it. And so I really didn't pay attention, as much attention as I should have, with regards to the material and all of those things. I just was so pleased to have the experience of freedom that I missed out. I didn't pay attention to important other things. But it was a great experience all around for me. I'm not quite sure I'd like to do it again, but I'd learn something new if I did, I guess, because I'm older. So, what does freedom mean to you? Is it a positive thing or a negative thing, or just a I want to get out of here thing? Because if it's a want to get out of here thing, it's not freedom at all. It's just I want to get out of here thing. So think about it, write about it, journal about it, because it's a very important aspect of your spiritual growing up. What is freedom to you? Anyway, I am out in the garden if you want me. I've got some trees to prune. That'll be good for my physical abilities. Namaste. Have a beautiful day. That is the last of the Purushatras. And tomorrow, and for a while, we will be talking about understanding Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist scholar. I'm just me, but I've read a lot, and I'd like to talk to you about what I understand Buddhism, what Buddhism is for me, and why I teach about it. Have a lovely day, and I will see you tomorrow sometime. Namaste. Bye-bye. Go forth and multiply.